In the last video, we talked about the exception manager as a research tool to prepare a collections person for contacting the customer. There are several different pieces of information that are available, and I won't go through them again here. But at this point, we're ready to make contact with the customer. Now, there are two ways to do it. Both of them are under New. So you can go into contact event history and review the previous contacts for this customer, which is a common thing to do. So if we go into the contact history screen, we'll see all of the different people that we've contacted, what we did, when we contacted them, what we talked about, and what they promised. Now, on this screen, you'll notice that we have a comment title. The comment title, we'll talk about in putting a new contact event in shortly. The comment title is a short summary of what happened during the contact. It's one sentence. The system allows you to enter a long comment behind this with all the detail that you wish to enter. So if we click on the comment title, you'll see a 3-dot ellipsis on the end. If you click on the 3-dot ellipsis, it'll bring up a window where you can write as much as you want. Now, unfortunately, Business Central does not allow us to make this box any bigger. I wish we could. In the older versions, we had the box the entire size of the screen, so you'll have to scroll through it. This entry is editable. This question has come up several times. Can we lock the contact and the comment? Well, we don't want to for a couple reasons. One is you may need to make some editing changes. In this case, let's add in some punctuation. Okay, I forgot the period, so we'll put the period in there. Maybe you forgot to mention some other details that you'd like to add to this comment. You can do that. So then we go in and we go back to here, and we can review whatever it is that we did, and then we can go to New and create a new contact event. This is one of the two ways that you can create a new contact event: from the contact event history screen or from the exception manager screen, which we're going to review in a second. So we go in, we say we're going to create a new contact event. The comment date fills in automatically, so we tab off of that. The next one is the contact number. This is a lookup into all of the contacts that you've created in the AR and Collections Manager that are accounting contacts. This is different from the Business Central contacts, or RMCon, Relationship Management contacts. Those are contacts that are accessible to all users, which in fact you might want to copy them down. Particularly when you're using the system for the first time, this screen will be empty, and you'll need to either add a new one in, or you can go to select from full list, and you can say, I want to update from relationship management. So updating from relationship management, if you have contacts that are associated with customer cards in Business Central, this will copy all of that information down into this screen so that you can use it in the Collections Manager. If you don't have any contact cards associated, then you'll need to go to New and add a new one in. Fill in all the information as you see it here, so that you have it in the future, and then select the person that you're going to contact. So in this case, we'll say that we're going to contact Andy. Okay. Now we go over to the next screen, to the next one, and we now ask for the actions. So the actions are, what did you do when you contacted Andy or tried to contact Andy? Maybe you left him a voicemail. Maybe you sent him an email. Maybe you actually called him. Maybe it was an incoming call and you need to add a new activity, an action to this list. You can add them on the fly. If you did something that's not in this list, add it in. So in this case, we'll say that we made a call. The next field is the invoice number. Now, this is not a mandatory field. If the contact that you made to Andy was about a specific invoice, then you can click on the ellipsis and see a list of all of the invoices that are in the exception manager. And you can select one. Say we're going to select this one. And we click and say, would you like to add this to the comment line? The answer is yes. Then we contact Andy and we have our discussion with Andy. Andy tells us whatever Andy tells us, and you write in a summary. Andy will pay this invoice next week. Now, if you now want to go into and write more detail, you can go into here and say enter comment. So we enter comment, and this gives you the box. Andy apologized for the delay and promised to work on cleaning up all old invoices. Click close, and now we have this entry and the entry behind it. So now the question is when did Andy promise to send money? So now today's date is April 27th of 2022. This opens up to the work date. My system work date is today in 2020. So I'm going to go forward to make so that this makes sense. And we go into, this is 427. So 427 is a Wednesday. He said he's going to send it next week. So that would be, let's say that he does a check run on Friday. So that would be May 6th. How much did he promise to send? He promised to send the full amount of the invoice, which is displayed here. If you enter an invoice number here, then the remaining amount of the invoice will be displayed here. Now, I mentioned before you don't need to enter an invoice number. If you're making contact with Andy about the entire account, and you don't want to make this about a specific invoice, simply leave this field blank. If you do leave it blank and you enter in an amount, so in this case, we'll say 78,254.54 because he said he promised to pay the entire amount. Okay. Now, if you did not select an invoice number, this will be left at 0. You enter an amount in here, and a dialog will appear that warns you and says if your intent was to make this promised payment against a specific invoice, you need to select the invoice number first. So this will pop up automatically every time you leave the invoice number field blank, which is fine. People do that all the time. So the next thing we need to do is set the next contact date. Now, the next contact date, as I mentioned early on, is absolutely critical to the function of this system. It's a follow-up. Now, automatically, according to our setup, we've set it so that the next contact date automatically fills in as 7 days from the comment date. But does it make sense to have a next contact date on May 4th? If he told you he wasn't going to issue the payment until May 6th. So you change it and you say, now, what do you change it to? That depends on your feelings about the situation. If you believe Andy and you don't want to bother him unnecessarily, then you can say, well, if he's going to issue the payment on the 6th, that's on Friday, then we should have it in our hands and posted and cash receipts by the 12th. So you make this on the 12th, okay, that if in fact you don't have it by the 12th, it's time to follow up with Andy and say, Andy, what happened? On the other hand, maybe you don't believe Andy And Andy has made promises before and hasn't kept them. So what you want to do is make the next contact date the same day as as the date he promised to make the payment, so that you can call him up and say, Andy, did you issue the payment? So how you use the next contact date is up to you. It fills in automatically, but you can and should change it to suit the situation. And that is it. So then you simply leave the screen, and Andy will pay this invoice next week. This is now the entry. If we click on the ellipsis, we'll see this is the long comment. Now, these comments, either the long comment or the comment title, will be available in one of our reports, which we'll talk about later. When you look at the contact history report, you're going to be able to see all of the contacts that the user made. One of the things I didn't mention is, if you slide this bar over here, the user ID of the person doing this automatically fills in. It's not necessarily the user ID of the person assigned to the account, because what happens if that person is on the phone, away from their desk, or maybe on vacation, or maybe they left the company and you haven't transferred it yet, which we'll talk about transferring later also. So whichever user ID makes the comment, that user ID will appear in the user field. Now, the other thing that you can do is, let's create another new contact. Well, let's do it the other way. So we close this. This is now history. Now, if you have a situation where you're brand new with the system and you've not contacted the customer through AR and Collections Manager before, and if you go to Edit Contact Event History, there will be nothing there. You can only create a new contact event for accounts that have some history entries. If you don't have any history entries, you have to use the create new contact event. This will work regardless of whether you have entries or not, but frequently you'll want to see what the previous contacts were and create a new one from here, but you can't create a new one if there aren't any previous contact events. So we go in and create a new contact event. Same thing. We select in this case, we will contact Stephanie. The action is voicemail, and the invoice number is, let's use this one, and the comment title is left voicemail and will contact again tomorrow. Now, maybe this is about this invoice and a whole bunch of others. So what you can do is go in here and say copy comment line. When you copy the comment line, it opens up a list of all of the exceptions, and you can say, I want to copy it to, and let's see, we want to copy it to this one, and this one. So now the exact same information that I just put in is now copied to all of the other invoices. So now we've updated all of these 4 invoice numbers with the exact same message. And if we close this and go back into contact event history, there they are, all 4 of them. Now, there is another tool that you can use when creating contact events, and that is if you want to see what the history of contacts about a specific invoice, then we can go in here and say in actions, customer, and say nope, navigate We don't want to create the contact event. We want to look at history, exception-specific comments. With the cursor on the line that you want to see, let's go back out and we'll say, because I think we made a comment about this one. So we go to navigate and we go to history and we say exception specific comments. This will show us the contact events that we've made for this specific invoice. Now, the other thing you should be aware of is when you create a next contact date, it automatically updates the next contact date for all of the exceptions in the exception list. Now, you can manually change the individual, the next contact date to be whatever you want. If you want it to be different than what you just did, because we just created a new contact event. We contacted the customer. The logic is that had we wanted to, we would have talked about whatever invoices we want to, and there's no sense in leaving an old next contact date, which might be for today or tomorrow, because we contacted him, we talked about what we needed to talk about. So this next contact date is automatically updated, and when we leave the screen and go back in, let's go back into, come on, and go back into the exception list. The next contact date was May 4th. It automatically resorts the list. All of the Canon Group entries have been updated for a next contact date of May 4th. So this is what happens when we create a contact event. We update the next contact, exiting the screen and re-entering resorts based on the next contact date, and your next oldest entry that needs attention is up at the top. This concludes the instructions for entering contact events. Thank you very much.